Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to take two of another Diabetes Tour Guide interview episode. My name is Andy. I'm your host, and this is the lovely Jenny Rogers, my mom, Mama B. Mama B, welcome to the podcast. How does it feel?
It feels great, Andy. Thank you so much for having me.
We have so many cups of coffee in. We're jittery with caffeine. We're ready to go. We want to put this one in the books and get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. This is great. The interview podcast really goes in and takes different perspectives of diabetes, and you have a very unique perspective of diabetes. You don't have it, but you have two kids who do have it. So it's very interesting too. So we're going to ask the same 5 questions that we ask everybody for this podcast, but it is going to be an interesting note to see what it's like from the perspective of a mother with 2 kids with type 1 who are diagnosed at very different times in their life. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Mom's used to being behind the camera, but she's very camera ready. Look at her. Ladies and gentlemen.
I am so not camera ready,
We are
but
camera ready.
you said a little bit about myself. What does that mean?
Okay, so really we'll just dive right into the first question. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. So really what I have is I have people with diabetes describe what their diagnosis was like. So I would like for you to take us through what Kelly, my sister's diagnosis was like versus what my diagnosis was like at 15 and kind of compare the two.
Wow.
And not compare. This is
Wow,
apples
yeah.
and oranges, not in a
Yeah.
bad way or a good way, but just kind of the different experiences you might have had.
First of all, I knew nothing about type 1 diabetes. I knew nothing about diabetes, period. So
And that is evident from the Karo syrup that Mom kept on stockpile.
okay, and Mountain
the
Dew.
kitchen.
And Mountain Dew. I
Mom
loved
loved Mountain Dew
I
and
loved
crackers
Mountain Dew.
and loved Karo syrup on those Hungry Jack biscuits.
But I didn't. He's absolutely right. I knew absolutely
Karo syrup.
nothing
High fructose
about
corn syrup.
about type 1 diabetes. When the kids were little, I was a very active mom, so I loved to run,
Yeah.
and running was my thing at that time. So once I
And the stationary bike.
and the stationary bike.
She'd roll that thing out to the pool. Stationary bike while we swam.
Yeah. So really, when you guys were born, my goal was to somehow run a 10K, as soon as I could, right after. So when I had Kelly came very quickly after Ben. They're about 14 months apart, and so when Ben came, when Kelly came. I just went right back into the running really, really strong. And as she was getting about 6, 7 years old, I had her running with me. So you're asking how was the diagnosis?
Run for the Roses.
We
Oak
were
Ridge
Run
Times.
for the Roses.
Run for the
We
Roses.
were running every kind of race that you could do, mother-daughter.
You are going through Rogers family history right now.
Yeah,
Right now.
I loved it. I
Run
loved
for the
it.
Roses.
And so, anyway, there's a couple of races that I noticed that she just kept wanting to walk, and I was like, oh, we're going to finish this race. We are going to finish the race, and I would be like, drink a Mountain Dew before, maybe 2 or 3. I was like, anything, get a little sugar in her, just let's go.
Pump her
and,
up. Let's go.
Yeah. And so anyway, I never, again, even your dad, he had no clue that we were moving into a type 1 phase of parenting. But I was also singing a lot in a kind of a singer-songwriter phase of my life.
Yeah.
And
Daily grind.
at the
Ladies and
daily-
gentlemen, the Rogers Family History coming to you. This is the Rogers Family History podcast.
So when I was doing that, I was away singing. And this is kind of how I found out about Kelly. And I think Kelly was at a movie. Were you with?
We were all at Titanic.
Yeah, except for me. And,
Except for you?
Yeah, because
you were at the Daily Grind?
I was singing. No, I was singing in Knoxville
Knoxville,
at Cokesbury or something like that.
Cokesbury Church, yeah.
And so anyway, I came home, and all of a sudden they were just all there saying, "Oh, I have type 1 diabetes," and everyone was just like, "Oh, look at me!" Kelly was so excited, and everybody was like, "Well, we have type 1," and it was that quick. And so I really didn't. If you want to know the truth, it was the way that we parented with you guys was to make it all positive, that it was not, diabetes was not something that was your life. It was just part of your life. So from that first moment, I remember Tom just saying, everything's going to be okay. All we do is just take him to, the children's hospital once a month, and we did all of that, and we moved through it. With you, it was a little bit different story. I think the diagnosis of Kelly affected you quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it affected Ben also, but you're more of a tender person with Kelly, and as being kind of the youngest of the three, and always you were always measuring out her bowls and making sure that she had 15 grams of snack, and we were just kind of all making it a game. Which again, when you get to that last question, I think that you're going to ask me, that's something that I might do differently, and I would have done differently. But when you were out mowing, and I do remember that day, and I do remember the years in between where you really felt that you could be a diabetic much easier than Kelly could be a diabetic, if I could say it like that. And so I think that when you're on set of kind of when you went out, he was mowing, and then all of a sudden he wasn't mowing.
I haven't mowed since. Thank you, Sycamore.
Yeah, he was not mowing. He
Not
was
mowing.
just flat out. And
Yep.
so
And mine was quick. Kelly's
yes.
is very insidious, which with the diagnosis, it can last years
Right.
sometimes, or it can last weeks. It just depends on how fast your beta cell dysfunction happens. Mine was quick. I was
Yeah.
fine, and then I wasn't.
Yes.
Kelly's is a little bit harder to catch.
Yeah.
And she was at an age 2, which was harder to catch. Mine was, I was a 15-year-old healthy, and then I wasn't.
Yeah, and I think that your dad did a little bit of the opposite with you. Having Kelly, when he was seeing those kind of signs with you, it was immediately, I think he's diabetic. And so we kind of were on board with those symptoms, and moved kind of quickly with you. And when we moved,
I gave my first shot.
yeah,
Yep.
it was almost like you were in the game, right at
And
that
I
time.
knew it too well. I knew it very well. It was 7 years between Kelly's and mine.
Yeah.
Or, about 7 years.
Yeah, and I think Kelly, well, first of all, as a mom, having two type 1s, having two type 1 diabetics is scary. So at that time, we were really worried about Ben and whether or not he was going to be in the same boat, and there was maybe something environmental that was going on, or something maybe that I had done, maybe with just, and I don't know if I want to say, but antibiotics. It seems like we went through
Right.
rounds of antibiotics with ear infections, and so I started kind
You
of
start to
going through my
think.
head,
Yeah.
what could have happened that could all three of them be diabetic. But Ben was, I don't know if he ever was even borderline, or whether we
Never.
worried about, so he kind of passed that phase, and we just moved in with two diabetics.
And Ben doesn't really catch much. Kelly and I we have, Kelly's had root canals. I've had fake teeth. We've both had a lot of stitches. Ben, 1 stitch. That's it, And maybe the gum disease known as gingivitis, but we're not sure.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Take that
I
one
rag
out.
on Ben.
that's edit.
Edit that one out. Edit that one out. No, but it does raise your risk. Having a direct sibling or immediate family member with type 1, it immediately raises your risk. I forget the exact statistic. It's still rare to have 2 within the same generation, to have 2. We do have a family in this neighborhood too that we got to know through the advocacy programs like JDRF and ADA that has 4 kids with diabetes. So it's not impossible, but it does kind of give you a red flag. There are programs now that if you're interested in that, you can have your siblings or your family members tested. It's called TrialNet. It's through JDRF, and it's just a finger stick. So you can know what your risk profile looks like if you have antibodies associated with it. But it sounds like there's very different, equally as terrible. Not a lot of grieving time. We kind of went right into math mode because I loved math. So I thought, this is an easy math problem. You just count everything you're supposed to do, and you get the right dosage, and it seems almost like a science project. And I learned very much what it's it's very emotional. And so, and two, I think women and men experience it differently too, because women go through menstrual cycles and the hormonal changes affect your glucose, which happened with Kelly a lot, especially in high school. So very different profiles. And two, I'm going nearly on 21 years. So that was a long time ago, even at that age when I was a little bit older. So too, my second question is, what's changed for you as a parent? Or really, when did you decide to let go? Like, how did you go through the transition of letting go of taking care of, like, I need to count everything for especially with Kelly, because I kind of started off counting all my own stuff and just doing it because I was older and I had 7 years of experience with Kelly. When did you start having Kelly do her stuff? Like, what changed for that?
I think all of it is hard. So I'm just going to say emotionally, all of it is hard. I think that your question is when did I let go? Is that kind of what you want me to share?
Yeah, and that's not what I ask everybody else, but this is a little bit different. But it's kind of like, what's the transition period of letting a kid? What do you think is a healthy transition period of letting a kid take care of their diabetes versus a parent taking care of their diabetes versus a kid?
Well, first, I'm going to address just the changes. I am a little bit jealous of the diabetic moms today, if you're watching this, and the fact that you guys have the pumps that all the material and the glucose levels and everything is sent to you, and you get these little dings and warning signs when your kid is high or low. And I never had that. So we were strictly shots, and then when Kelly went into the pump, before Andy was diagnosed, or yes, I think she was on the pump or not on the pump when you were diagnosed.
Around that time.
Around that thing. I still had no access to their information. They were writing it in a little log, and then we would go to the endocrinologist and we would show the log, and that was a little stressful. Let's just say, when they're like 13, they don't want to write everything down. And so it'll be like, have you written it down? Have you written it down? So I became more of a police mom, as far as always saying something, have you done? And have you done this? Have you, we're getting ready to go in, do you have your book ready? And, do you know how you're going to present yourself to the endocrinologist? So I think with all of that, letting go was a necessity for me. Letting go was a necessity for me because there were so many unknowns and so many things that you guys could hide from me, and I had no control over, and yet I was going to feel it. And so that means, like, if they dropped and I don't know what they ate or what they drank, too much Gatorade, too much, what I'm saying, it was just so much out of my control, and then I would end up being mad all the time, that it was a healthier thing for me to give the diabetes back to them. I exercised that with Kelly when she was around probably 15. I tried, or maybe 13. I tried to let her have it and not think about it anymore. And it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking. She was one that wanted everyone to come into our house and play, because I think she could make sure she had everything with her instead of going and spending the night somewhere else. You were very confident and, took more steps out with your diabetes than she did. But for me, letting go is key. So it was watching you fall is hard and scary, but in that moment, I think you kind of move into a little bit more of your faith, which is a belief system that you're. I'm not the only one watching you.
Right.
Right. So therefore, to know that, to trust that God would send someone to maybe like an angel. I remember praying for angels all the time. You
Yeah.
know, like angel, like, you know, if they're out somewhere, just make sure that some kid is watching, you know, that could be kind of that spirit angel for you guys. So emotionally letting go is important for a mom.
And to give the kids some sort of sense of ownership that they're going to be okay, because there's a fine balance between being a helicopter parent and to care and then to care too much. So that because the kid can be very debilitated by the time they actually get to college if their parents done everything for them. So it's nice that we have these tools now like Dexcoms to at least be like, for the emergencies, I know it and you don't have to tell me, but I do know it because I got a ding. And that way you can kind of approach the conversation differently. But too, I would say it's yeah, it's different from when I just being 15, I'd already had a routine. And so to add that into the routine was a little bit easier for me than having a routine set at 9. I could see that difference of wanting people to come over instead of wanting to go out. But yeah, it's hard when you have to be a policeman a health policeman on top of just being a parent. It's just awful, and you can't control any of it. It's very much diabetes is out of people's control, especially a parent's control. So it's just it's hard. Yeah, it's really really hard. But it's the technology that we have right now. Even we just did a recent episode on like having over the counter Dexcoms available, so everyone kind of can know what their blood sugar is doing. That's a really cool thing that's happening with type 1. And we're over 100 years of insulin being a treatment for diabetes, not a cure, but a treatment. And 100 years ago, we would have just died. I mean, literally, yeah. So it's just, it's the changes is really, really interesting, but especially too, as a parent, because you're very much affiliated, but you're not in it, but you're in it, but you're not experiencing it. You're experiencing it from a different angle, which is interesting. And two, for people with diabetes, it's stressful for the people that love you. It's very, very stressful. So having empathy for people when they ask, how are you doing? What are your blood sugars doing? It used to be very annoying. It used to be, not from you, but when people would ask me or say, I even had someone as recently as last night say, oh, diabetics can't have ice cream. I went, oh, really? Like, really? I was like, oh, okay. Well, you said this to the right person. Yes, they can, but I have to explain that again. It can be very annoying. But then I thought, this person remembers I have diabetes. They care. They care what I'm eating. So it's actually a nice thing. So that has to have an empathetic side from a person with diabetes for the people taking care of you. And you mentioned community. It's very important. I had an unbelievable group of friends in high school that cared about my diabetes. They would, especially when you're going through high school and college and you start drinking and going out and going to parties, I had people who cared. We were surrounded by good people. Did you feel comfortable with that? Was that a good thing? That
Yes, I think that was one of
what
the
if
things.
you're like, no, your friends sucked. I'm sorry, they sucked.
No, amazing friends. Yeah, both you and Kelly had amazing.
And we had
group of
good groups
friends
that
in high-
cared.
Yeah,
So they constantly asked.
yeah. I think that getting into the school system. So parents, if you,
Yes.
I think this is one mom thing that you can do easily is to make one of the things that you can give your kids is as education. So getting into a classroom and sharing a little bit yourself, and not just about what it is that your kid has, or even making that a part of their journey, is them being able to share their story, and it as again a part of educating the kids in the room. I was a big one on getting involved in the cure, which again, it was a plus and a minus. My main thing was that I wanted to be part of the community that was doing something to change the trajectory of diabetes. And I still think that is so important, because then, first of all, we had a personal investment. Performance medicine was based on the fact that we have 2 kids that are type 1 diabetics, and we want to be able to, if anything, to hopefully turn that around, and maybe even in the fertility nutrition, be able to do something maybe a little bit differently that would boost the immune system in the baby even before it's born, and that kind of thing. So I think all of that is hope. So I encourage moms of type 1s to definitely do community things. As a songwriter at that time, and that was big. I remember before Kelly was diagnosed, there was a friend of Kelly's and probably Ben's whose dad was a type 1 diabetic, and also I think one of their kids was type 1, and so we did we wanted to be a part. He was looking for a kidney transplant or something, and and I wrote a song called "Paint This World" that we went around, got all the kids to sing on it. And,
every kid from Oak Ridge was
every
was
kid
on.
Every
kid on the block.
But it's those kind of things and I had no idea that I was going to end up having 2 kids diagnosed with type 1s, but being able to watch this little girl sell these little cassettes and all the money go to help find a cure for diabetes was helping her deal with the fact that her dad was in the hospital, and
gave her a platform to talk about it.
100%. And so I think that kind of community involvement in any way that is your gifting, whether or not your kid wants to just write a little story about it when they're
a musical later.
The Andy and the Beats. Yeah, that was just so cool.
Good times. Yeah.
And so all those things are real important.
Next question. What is one thing that you find, this is something I ask people with diabetes, something they enjoy about having diabetes? Is there anything you can say no. Is there anything that's joyful about having diabetes? Maybe. I won't even give you preface for what. Do you think anything's brings you enjoyment as a parent with type 1?
Like out of all of his interviews, Lynn Edwards, if you haven't watched that video.
It's a good one. It's a good one. They're all good.
That interview, I felt all of that emotion of frustration and anger that he had when you asked him that question and said, is there anything joyful about diabetes? And I would say absolutely nothing. I can think of nothing that is good about a body not being able to take in nourishment and process it without having something external to break down that food. So in other words, like to have insulin, to have it is there's nothing good about that.
My answer to that was Diet Cokes.
Oh, Diet Cokes.
And going through the back of the line at Disney. That was a good time.
No,
and we weren't supposed
things.
to. Now they have fast passes, but Kelly and I just went through the back of the line and said we couldn't wait in the heat, and they let us on every ride. I was like, this is good.
Okay, and then also like getting out of class because I'm feeling low. I mean, none of that makes me happy.
I know.
None
I'm
of
sorry.
That.
It's the small
like
wins.
I get the call that you guys are skipping class or getting out too many times. Are they really that
right?
necessary?
That's what
And I'd have to go, were you really low?
I know. And
or were you really sick? And no,
I think that's totally fair. That
nothing's good about it. It's like stressful.
Then what's the most annoying thing about it? What's the most the number one annoying thing?
Okay, the most annoying thing that I ever experienced, and it was horrible. So, when Kelly was younger, it was the Novolog and the what's the other one? The nighttime.
Atlantis.
And in the nighttime, it was 2 bottles.
Mm-hmm.
I had a long term and a short term.
Mm-hmm. Just depends. There's different.
Okay, so we had 2 little bottles, and they looked exactly the same. So at that time, they were little bottles, and you drew up your insulin, and I was drawing it up for her, and so because and it was when she was first diagnosed, and I was drawing it up, and I drew up the short term for the long term. And the minute I gave the shot. I knew what I had done, and it was just like trying to keep her awake, trying to just pour sugar. It was the worst,
Right.
ice. And then she was mad at me. Of course, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
mad at me too, and but I felt.
But
I
that's
felt like I could have killed. Like, what if I
Yeah.
killed her? And
Yeah.
then I thought, well, I've got to go to therapy for that.
listen,
Therapy.
the stock that we have in therapy in the Rogers family, we
Therapy,
got a lot.
therapy 101.
Skincare number 1, therapy number 2. But you're right. I've done that. And I've done that same thing.
Yeah.
I've given 26 units of fast-acting insulin, which would
Yes.
could kill you. But you immediately recognize it and start to. But as a 20, I did that at 18 or 17 or 18. I can do that on my own. But to do that to kids, that's tough when they don't know. Yeah. And they try to safeguard that now too with colors. They
Yes.
color code everything, but still it's not perfect. Which is why sometimes
Oh,
pumps
and
are
then one
helpful.
time I ran out. Like she said, "Do you have any more insulin?" And I forgot to go pick it up. And it's that kind of thing, because the truth is, she knows she can't do without it, and then I know she can't do without it.
And you're responsible
And
for
I'm
picking it up, paying for it, and
responsible.
insurance,
Yeah.
and
So it was-
just
it's that
covered.
kind of thing.
And yeah. I have a family I see where the mom, the dad, and the son, they're all type 1.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're all on different schedules, and it's just like it's a lot. It's a lot. So, I can see that being annoying. Okay. 2. So, man, we've covered a lot of good stuff. Okay, this is the last question.
Okay,
Like, let's
ready.
wrap it up. Do you think there's going to be a cure? Do you honestly think there's going to be a cure for type 1? And we've had different answers for this.
Okay, I'm not good at this kind of answer, because that one time that we ended that race and Kelly said
Right.
it was for the cure. We were running a race for the cure, and at the end she said she thought she was cured, and I had to say no. And so I just do I think there's going to be a cure? I want to say yes. So I really believe that that cell transplant for I don't know. I think there's going to be something that in the future that will. But then again, we have all the companies that are making a tremendous amount of money on insulin, and
That is true.
a lot of people would be out of work. I don't know. I hate to think like that too.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of talk both ways of, oh, the pharmaceutical companies are making so much money, they're never going to give that up. It is true that if you look at the markup of insulin right now, that they're actually they're bringing that is happening to where a lot of I don't know if it's state level, county level. There's some legislature that they're doing that you actually can't mess with insulin prices, and that will be like a congressional thing that you can't mark that up tremendously, because it is marked up, and you can get insulin for pennies on the dollar if you get it out of Canada and out of South America, and it's the same thing. The patent for insulin was sold for $1 by Banting and Best from the people that made it, so it shouldn't be. But then again, that's on human insulin. That's not on synthetic insulin, which is better insulin that people use. So you can kind of say, well, the technology, there's arguments for all of it. But I do find that it's a lot easier to have it now. It's a lot easier to have it now. So the money that's gone into it at least is seeing better treatments, which is good. And a lot of what they're doing on the Rise for a Cure is preventing it, not fixing it. So instead of trying to regenerate beta cells, it's making sure that the beta cells don't get destroyed in the first place, which I think is a more promising, that's not promising, but more realistic. But so your answer is maybe.
Yeah, and probably if
And it's hard to think about that too. If you're
rather
like,
than the cure, like on my side, that would be more on the one who actually has the disease. But on my side, if I was to look back, because how many years have you had
20,
and how many years for Kelly?
27, 28.
Okay, so for 28 years, I've been a mom of a diabetic kid for 28 years. So what I would look back and say, is there anything that I would change that I did? And there is one. So that I don't know if this would make a difference in your kid that is diabetic, but the one thing I wish I'd done, and I think about it all the time, is I wish that I had celebrated more. I really
Diabetic
do.
birthdays.
Yeah, I just wish I had. Like, I wish our mentality as a family in preventative medicine, and with Tom being, a doctor, a lot of times the doctor's family, we don't get a lot of that nurturing from that end. Everything is very like, oh, you're fine.
It's
fine.
clinical, and
that's
and
fun.
some of it too is how you. I agree.
And so
Yeah.
I would just like I wish that I had a tradition of saying, wow, because these are my heroes. You are my hero. Kelly is my hero. Ben is my hero. And again,
Gingivitis is tough.
will you quit saying that? You have got to quit saying that. Okay. I am telling you, poor Ben.
Poor Ben.
Okay. No, but I am saying that
sorry.
all three,
You were
all
on
three of
you were
my,
on a roll, and
I
just
know, but all
totally,
three kids are my heroes.
Yes.
But definitely with having to work through your entire life with some kind of
A huge hurdle.
a substance to keep you alive. That right there needs to be celebrated. And I think if I knew your birthday, the date of that, or I had something every year, rather than what I took, okay, if they're doing well, their A1C is good, I did rewards. And that puts the diabetic kid on a performance basis, and I don't believe that either of you felt that you were loved if you had an A1C or not loved.
No.
But as far as the celebratory, I did it towards a great A1C, and then that wasn't fair to compare two diabetics in the same family, because I believe that your personality was better at managing, or maybe even not, maybe your body did better with the insulin being brought in than Kelly's body, or your A1Cs should not have been compared.
No, and comparative stuff, especially too within disease states, is never a good thing.
It's just never. Yeah.
Or that's a tough one to be like. You want to encourage within range blood sugars for longevity and for the health of your organs.
Correct.
Promote, because that promotes health. So
Yes.
promoting health is good, but
And that's what we were trying.
which is not a bad thing,
Yeah.
which is a really good thing. But yes, celebrating. A lot of families end up celebrating diabetic birthdays. If that's something, put that in the comments. If you celebrate diabetic birthdays, put it in, because we want to know that stuff for how long you've lived with diabetes.
Or even if you do something else besides a diabetic birthday,
how you celebrate.
How do you
what's a
celebrate
tradition?
the we are so proud of you type of thing?
I think that's important, especially with something that's not going to end. Realistically, not going to end. Maybe prevented in the future. Maybe if they find some sort of stem cells like ViaCyte, that can regenerate beta cells. But most likely, I tell people it's just not going to end, and there's going to be ups and downs with it. How do you celebrate and keep that tradition alive? Share your traditions with us in the comment sections. We want to know. We'll celebrate with you. I think it's worth celebrating.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot to be thankful for right now with all this stuff that's coming out. And we're thankful for the parents that take care of us. I would much rather have diabetes than be a parent. I feel your job was way harder than to have it.
No.
And I know that a parent would say that too. But the worry that goes into it's a lot. It's hard. All of it's hard. So there's a grieving process, but there's a celebratory process. Everyone's experience is different. Comparison is only going to be a wound against yourself, so don't do it. I don't recommend that for anybody. If you're chasing targets, or go for time in range, not A1C. That's the new standard right now too. And also I tell everyone with diabetes, especially the ones with type 1.5 that I'm dealing with, which some doctors don't even say that's a thing, but just latent autoimmune diabetes where you're still making some of your own insulin, but you're not, being very forgiving to yourself, because it is way up and way down, and you really don't know. It's when your beta cells are going to spit out insulin and when it's not. It's very difficult. And so I try to tell patients that people get so hard on themselves. Oh, my A1C was terrible. Like, you're still alive, right? Like, you're still here and you're laughing at like we got to celebrate the good time. Like, you've got to be forgiving to yourself because it's.
I think as a parent, that's also important. Is cut
yes,
yourself some grace.
Because it's all the time and go take a trip somewhere.
Yeah, or even every day remind yourself that that it is their journey and it is definitely part of yours as you're raising them, but you're okay. I mean, you're a totally different person and a different body, and you need to take care of it and honor it, mentally, physically, spiritually. Just honor your body, and in that, I think it helps you become a better mother of a diabetic.
Yes, absolutely. And if not, some K-Worth syrup, a Mountain Dew, and a glass of wine fixes a lot. Am I right? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for another great episode of the Diabetes Tour Guide. I'm so thankful to have my mama be here to talk about diabetes and this hard stuff. So join us next time. If you have any comments, questions, celebrations, traditions, put them in the comment section. Let us know what you want us to talk about. If you want to be on the podcast, we want to talk to you. Dear God, we do.
Yes,
we have no one in the lineup right now.
Yes, I think
you could be the first in the lineup
because I think that this is a good platform.
And we've also gotten a lot of really fun. We've had people who've had diabetes for a long time, newly diagnosed people with diabetes during pregnancy. We've had male and female. We've had moms with diabetes. We've had a lot. So it's a lot of good perspective. And there's only so much that a randomized trial can tell you about what diabetes or any illness is. Really living it is the only way to really know. So having different people's perspective is good. 100%. And knowing that it's all your own story too. It does not have to be anybody else's. Another stop along the tour.
Yes.
Along the tour. Thank you for joining us. Stay educated, stay healthy, and until next time, we'll see you then.